Hey, hey, hey. Today we're going to go over the results. Sit back and prepare to be agitated. My name is Rudy, you're watching Alpha Investments. So, this particular video is going to be based strictly on the results of the 2-year anniversary Rudy Gem Keeper card. The actual intentions, my mindset and engineering of this, and all the data of who bought it, how many people bought it, how many people bought 1 versus 2, how concentrated, how many were actually sold, what was the point, why the $1,000 price, what's the deal. We're going to go over all that today. So first, we're going to start with some of the most interesting data. So it's interesting to understand a few things. First, you can't understand because I'm speaking a goofy language until I put the visor on. Video starts 46 seconds in. In this world, there's a reason Wizards of the Coast does not disclose most information. There's a reason that corporations don't disclose details to the public on plans, goals, in print runs, in timetables, because the public will use any piece of information to their advantage and they will analyze it and calculate it. And this game proves that. Let's start, shall we? First things first. Here's the timeline of 24 hours. Here's hour 0. Here's hour 24. 24 hours, 0 hour. There's 12 hours into the sale. There's the full timetable. This is quantity. This is quantity of sold. So we'll just say Q. Quantity sold. So this area represents how many orders were coming in and people were buying this particular thing. Rules of the game, remember, any patron over $15 tier can buy 1 or 2 gem keepers for $1,000 each, or 2 of them for $2,000. The goal is that either A, the card sells out, or B, we make it to 24 hours, the card doesn't sell out and remainder are destroyed, reducing the supply. So you have different types of people who are going to look at this situation very uniquely. You're going to have people in Group A that do not want other people to buy it, and they want the highest amount to be destroyed at the end of 24 hours. And they are not going to have none of the buyers are going to have any information on how many units are sold along the way. Completely quiet. No updates, no nothing. So let's go right into the results here. This is fascinating, folks. This is where life gets quite interesting. Is this a good marker? Does it work good? Look at this, folks. So, this is what happened. This is the craziest shit I ever seen, ladies and gentlemen. So what happened was, at the beginning of the sale, you had everybody who just really wanted it, and they wanted to jump in and make sure they didn't miss out. They placed their order immediately. 9 p.m. when the sale started. Here's 9 p.m. the following night when the sale ended. After a couple hours into the sale, probably by 10, 11, the quantity of people who were buying this item dropped to almost 0. It's insane. And literally, there was a giant window of time in this middle area here where almost nobody, like 0 to 1 order, maybe 2 orders, less than between 0 and 5, were coming in overnight, throughout the day. It became radio silence. Radio silence. Then, right at the end, the last 30 minutes of the sale, this huge wave came in and the orders skyrocketed. So that tells me, once again, by telling the patrons the rules of the game, a group of them, a very large group of the patrons, literally worked together to wait to see, as long as they knew the sale was still going. That means all 1,500 cards didn't sell out, and therefore meant there was a higher probability of making money by having a lower supply into circulation, so they would wait to the very last minute to decide whether to place an order. So that is the curve of how the orders actually came in. As of the filming of this video, approximately, and again, subject to change by plus or minus 1 or 2%. We have pending e-checks, some crypto that hasn't gone through. PayPal's got a couple payments on hold. And just so you know, an e-check through PayPal means a patron sent a payment for $1,000, and they're paying with like their debit card checking account, and PayPal holds the order for like 5 to 7 days to make sure it clears. Sometimes they don't. PayPal reverses it and gets rid of it. And it's, so I don't know specifics. So there may be a 1 to 2% variance, either higher or lower. But as of the filming of this video, today is Monday morning, holiday, Columbus Day in the United States. I guess it's a thing. There's no mail today. So as of Monday morning right now, I have 1,317 confirmed sold Rudy Gemkeeper cards. Okay? This is where it gets really fun. %70 of the orders bought 2 of them. 30% of the orders only bought 1. Now, what does that mean? That means that as of this point in time, the people who own this particular card is extremely consolidated and concentrated in a small group of people. So, for example, out of 1,300, 10% of 1,300 is how much, everybody? About 131, 132, 131.7. So 131 and a midget Rudy, and a half a Rudy. No, I'm kidding. So essentially, you got about 400 people who bought one. 400 people have a Gemkeeper. Okay? Now, essentially, the other 70%, so about 900 of the cards, are owned by 450 people, have 2, and approximately what? Approximately 400 people have 1. So the total people who have this card now is approximately 850 people. So that's really interesting. That means 450 people control 2/3 of the supply. Huh. Now what gets even more interesting, hang on, let me get my numbers here. 51 or 52%, let's just round it. 52% of the people who purchased anything are patrons that have purchased every single flesh and blood item I've offered since the beginning 2 years ago. Which, based on my calculations, on today's market price, that means over half the people who bought this item are individual patrons who've been with me for 2 years, bought since the alpha kits, and have made an estimated profit on paper of between $50,000 and $150,000, depending if they sold open, kept sealed, or if they bought the max quantity, or how many kits. So what's interesting is over half the people who bought this item are people who have already made and are very loyal to the game. These are very hardcore flesh and blood people. These are very people who are they've already done very well. I know there's a group, I know there's like 5 people who've actually sold all their flesh and blood, they've made like 80,000 profit, and they bought a house for their family. Just crazy stories, which is incredible to hear. So I know most of the people who purchased this and were kind of targeted or were attracted to it were people who have already done very well. They're very loyal to the game no matter the direction of it. All right, so now that we've already gone to the video a little bit further, most of the viewers have dropped off. Most of the people who are just clicking for a minute, just being angry, this and that, have left. So let's go into this. So essentially, based on this quantity and the dollar amount, yeah, it's true. I mean, there was a lot of money involved, and it was a fascinating thing. But let me be honest with you. I felt more alive during that 24-hour period than I have in a long time. The rush and enjoyment I had from that was priceless. I loved it. The money, yeah, it's great, but in my situation financially, in my personal life and everything, if I make an extra $10 million or if I lose $10 million, absolutely nothing changes in my life. And I wake up the next day and I work all day and I put in 10 to 12 hours and we resume like it doesn't make any difference. So that's something to understand my mindset of where I am. There is a diminishing return scale of money and finances, where obviously the first $50,000 to $100,000 a year you make in income is a very big deal for a certain level of life. Now, the extra 100,000, the extra million, the difference between making 400,000 a year and 500,000 a year to an individual or a family is almost, you won't even feel the difference. To someone like a penis rocket Jeff Bezos who makes billions, if he gains an extra billion or loses a billion, he doesn't even probably look at his phone. So you have to understand the scaling of everything, folks. So that's the first part of this video, I think, is to understand that. So going into the second part of this video, a lot of people don't know me. A lot of people don't watch a lot of the videos, so they just kind of hear, I heard this, Rudy evil, scum, scam, pump and dump. I want to talk about the actual state of Flesh and Blood, the impact of the game and LSS and James, the company, what's going on. The goal, in my opinion, was executed beautifully. The objective of all this stuff was to have tremendous conversation, pro and con, towards Flesh and Blood, the name and the brand to get out there. And of course, people are going to argue with me and say, well, Rudy, this is a lot of negative. It reinforces the game is too big or it's too expensive for regular people. And good. Well, Rudy, everybody knows you can't play Flesh and Blood. Nobody plays it or the game's too expensive. Good. Well, Rudy, everybody knows you can't get first edition. It's too expensive. Good. Fucking good! That's the point. Well, Rudy, no, it's not. Because that scares new players away. No, it doesn't. Don't give me that shit. The day people stop complaining about the supply of boxes is the day you overprint it. The day that people say the cards are cheap. Well, congratulations. You got mystical archives in every pack worth 1 to 4 cents. The day the cards don't have value and people stop complaining is the day that you've pushed the envelope too far. You need to have a degree of anger and emotional triggering from the internet and an emotional response from humans across the world. Because that proves the concept that they love the damn product so much. Number one, they care. They're upset because they like the game. It's a good fucking game. That's why it's successful. I didn't make the game. I believed in James. I was skeptical at first with the game. After I saw Arcane Rising come out and I saw the direction James was having, I was sold for life. I was like, dude, I will ride with you to the end. I knew this was the real deal. Okay, then of course Crucible came out and Shiana and oh my god, I just forget it. Then the Monarch thing, and of course, oh Rudy, the Monarch prices came down and I don't care. You don't get it. You don't get it. You know what a funny thing James said to me on the phone one time, and I hope he doesn't get mad that I shared this. He said, Rudy, there are shitty Magic sets out there. Mercadian Masks, he made fun of. Scourge, Legions, there are shitty sets out there that are worth fortunes. And you're trying to tell me in 5 to 10 years from now, you don't think prices of these first edition or, oh, Monarch's crashing, Tails is down. You don't think a well-engineered product in a beautiful thing like this isn't going to take the same path? I said, you're right. You're right. Even I apologize because I got so obsessed with the short term. I was like, Monarch's only been out since May. May, June, July, August, September. 5 full technical months. And of course, obviously releasing all the Monarch Unlimited at once was a bad move and, never going to happen again. It was an oopsie doopsie. Oopsie doopsie. It's okay. Because that means he's human. Hate to break it to you all. Not a meat popsicle. He's a human. Multipass. All right? And it's one of these things where you look at everything and the emotional response was achieved. It was what I wanted. My biggest fear of this, I didn't really give a shit whether the card sold out or if I sold 10 copies. It really, that's the Timmy mindset of focusing. Did Rudy make 100 billion gazillion Zimbabwe dollars? The money, yeah, it's cool. It's nice. But that really wasn't the objective below the surface. A lot of people figured it out, though. The objective was to get people so emotionally left field slapped by Chuck Norris that it would literally cause their washer and dryer to break and be forced to call Handyman Rudy services. It forced people to talk about it because it was so absurd they had to. The human response was, OMG, holy shit, what is this idiot scam artist doing? Wolf of Magic, just scumbag. I got to make a video. I got to tell people. This is permanent damage to LSS in the game. That was my biggest fear, was that nobody was upset and nobody said anything. That was my biggest fear. And that was what gave me the biggest anxiety. But man, the rush in watching it and seeing the message boards in the markets and all these people sending me screenshots of these private groups and everything on these Facebooks and Tumblrs and Silk Roads and Backpage and Craigslist and Rudy List, and it felt so good. And it made the game worthwhile. And it's important that people need to understand the way the chessboard works. And this also, the results of the sales, reinforce that people are so vested and passionate about Flesh and Blood that they literally were making decisions on the timeline based on what they knew about supply. In other words, one of the transitive property of elimination and things you know and unknown, based on knowing A equals B, and based on knowing what C is, and if you know C is A, you can move the numbers around and create your own analogies, and you can create your own subset of derivative data. Big fancy words, makes me sound smart, right? And that's what made people say, okay, we'll know if the sale makes it, it didn't sell out. So anything that doesn't sell the card out is a win. That means anyone, even if it, which turned out that little bit, about 10% less than selling out worked. And of course, some of the cards are, I can't sell, and there are some cards that I'm going to make sure are in the destroyed pile because some of them have really bad dings on the edge, or a few of them that were on top of the pile and at the bottom of the pile were kind of yucky. A few of the cases had some weird printing issues. And again, there's going to be some variance and everything, but that's what I was focused on. I was focused on the market's response and people giving me feedback, not on the sales and the price. That was the smoke and mirror. The objective was how far and wide can we make creepy scumbag Rudy, persona, character, actor, crisis actor, there's a keyword trying to get some people triggered. How much can we push to get people outside the bubble of fab to discuss this insane, scummy move? How far can we get the reach to spread outside the normal people who would never ever hear about Flesh and Blood, that would never ever care about it, but what they will care about is that Rudy guy that hate online, and you ain't gonna believe what he's planning this time. That is the golden goose. That's the Da Vinci Code of the Rubik's Cube of how to solve things. It's really about something greater here, folks. And no, and again, they're really, it's kind of funny. Although one thing we didn't see coming was the secret lair thing. We didn't think everybody, I told James originally I was going to make my own little cardboard box and put special stuff in it, and shredded Flesh and Blood common cards, and I was going to put the Rudy card in the middle. And James last minute was like, no, Rudy. It's a special thing. I got to make a nice little box, and I'll make something special for you. And I loved it. And then right after we started doing it, everybody started calling it Secret Lair. And I was like, damn, that packaging really does make it feel like a secret. So that was kind of a funny thing that I did not anticipate the variable, but that was a fun little surprise. And that always reinforces too what I talked to everybody about is you can't always understand, no matter how much effort and engineering you put into something, you can't fully understand how the market's going to view it. I spent a lot of time trying to think about and plan, if I do A, B, or C, everybody watching, how will you all view it? Will you view it by A, B, or C? Or will you come up with a different view, like Secret Lair thing? So sometimes we miss a few, but overall, that's really where the effort and engineering comes in, everybody. So conclusion of everything, to address a couple questions, that's where we're at. So the biggest thing that surprises me is that literally 450 people, that's it, own 2/3 of the supply. I think that's the most important takeaway. In addition, half the people who bought are people who are very hardcore fab people from the beginning and have already made so much money they didn't even care. They literally were just like, I just want to have a piece of it from my fab collection. I've made a fortune. I ain't flipping it. I don't care. So I know there's a market like that. Now, the last chunk of this video, before we swing back around again, I want to talk about what do I think is going to happen with the price of the item. What do I think the patrons are going to do? Because now it's in a situation, it's literally up to these 850-ish people. They are the ones who control the price, the supply. It is up to them. They can do whatever they want. So that is kind of the next part of this video, moving into part 3 here, to determine what happens. So, in my opinion, I think, and as we've already seen before I filmed this video, I already saw there's I think 15 of my patrons have flipped it. The average selling price between $1,400 and $1,700 per $1,000 kit. So they're even after shipping and fees, they're going to make a ton of quick cash. Good for them. That's great. Do I think the price is going to sustain? I don't know. I'm very skeptical if the price is going to hold $1,500. It's averaging between 14 and 18 with an average sale of 16 if you take every sold price together right now. Do I think the average sold price will hold at 16? It's really going to come down to this particular group here of 450 patrons who bought 2 of them. Are those 450 people, if all of them, see here's the funny thing about life. If all 450 of these people actually work together and not go for the Timmy mindset to undercut each other, they can do anything they want with the pricing. If they're patient, they can literally just leave them all at $4,069.69, $420.69. They could literally leave the price and just leave it for years. And then, yes, you in the back. Okay. And now Timmy in the back says, well, Rudy, that's dumb because if nobody buys it, well, that's the point. If you wait long enough, price memory and market attachment to numbers tends to make it stickier to the number that people are used to. It is a form of psychological market manipulation, and it can be related on Wall Street, for example. Right now, everybody knows Amazon's like a $3,000 stock, right? If Amazon drops to $2,000 a share, dude, I'd buy the living hell out of it, first of all. But the point is, the market and the perception is that it's always around $3,000 a share because it's used to seeing that number. That price memory is a very powerful psychological indicator and a motivator. And that's one of the things. Remember, we've talked about this on this channel, folks. For those of you who actually watch intricate videos on these topics, it's important to understand the mind and the human wiring of the brain is engineered to be the worst possible investor, worst possible collector, and be kind of a shitty person. You are wired naturally to look for that. It's a defense mechanism to look out for yourself. Well, is that a scam? Something's wrong here. Nah, scumbag. You are wired as a defense mechanism to do that. So, of course, many people, like I said, Rudy is a very polarizing individual. There's usually not many people out there that say, yeah, Rudy's okay. No. Most people in the world absolutely think Rudy's, the godsend, cardboard, empire, whatever. And the other half think I'm the worst thing that ever happened since they sliced a loaf of bread or they took the crust off the PB&J. You have very polarizing opinions, and that is typical human wiring. That's how we view things. You have very extreme reactions. And that's also a side effect of social media and culture, and of course, pick a side and hate the other. That's a very common thing in our society nowadays. So I don't believe, to swing it back now, I don't believe that 450 people will work together. And my rationale for that is because the bigger the group think and the larger the pool of individuals, the higher the probability that they mutiny and they attack each other and they hate each other. The bigger the player base, Magic the Gathering has 69 million players worldwide. Flesh and Blood has 69 players worldwide. The bigger the number, the more polarizing, and people tend to pick sides and hate anyone that doesn't have the perfect alignment to their point of view. And I think that's normal, and I think that's acceptable. I don't agree with it, but that's okay. It's okay to have different opinions. And more importantly, I consider the huge thing a success. So in the short term, based on what we know, I believe the price is either going to stay flat or slowly drift lower in the short-term time horizon. And I think as the price drifts lower, if a lot of these people who bought the 2 want to sell one to pay for the other type thing, I believe you're going to have price erosion depending on these 450 people's financial situation and how quickly they want to dump to the market. Now, I think the people who only bought one, most of those individuals only bought one because they wanted to keep it. That was the intention of allowing 1 or 2. First of all, I didn't think I would sell anywhere near the 15, 1600, wherever the number is. I don't have it written up here. I didn't think I would sell anywhere near what I consider to be the most amount that I have right at this point in time. I didn't consider that to be the thing. All that matters is a circulating supply that'll be in the world. And I believe that this tells us right here that we know a third of the people who purchase pretty much intend to keep it. And we know the people who buy 2 have a higher probability of wanting to sell one of those 2. Therefore, the bigger this number is, the higher the probability that we have downward pressure on the product because they own more than one. Therefore, the brain is more likely to be willing to sell, flip, or let go of one of those units, because psychologically you know you own an additional copy, so whether it goes up or down, you got a backup. You know? You got a backup. It's kind of that concept. So in my opinion, short term, depending what these people do, if I had to place my bet, I would expect short-term price erosion as some people try to lock in money or profit to pay their credit card or whatever. But long-term, I don't think the card and the value is really going to be up to any of these people. I think long-term, it's going to dictate how James and Legend Story Studios runs and continues to expand the game. Based on what I know about James and the plans for the game in the future and how hardcore he is and the belief I have in the gentleman and the company and the artists, the people getting involved, everything around the ecosystem of the game, the expansion of the game, my bet on the game is that the game ain't going nowhere. And my bet is we haven't seen nothing yet. I think this shit, as in the game as a whole, has a very, very bright, wild future. Now, as long as James doesn't release some stupid 50-card Fallen Empire 5-art variant piece of crap set that nukes the game really bad, or if he doesn't create so much overprinting supply of first edition, where first edition boxes collapse below 100 and just become a disaster, if we avoid specific scenarios like that, the game is going to continue to excel at a very strong rate. If along the way, in the next 6 to 12 months are probably going to be the most pivotal point of the game of Flesh and Blood. The next two sets probably, the next set, which is the third set of the next block, so a smaller set, supplemental set maybe, if it's the same as the first three sets, I would assume. The next set, which rounds out the Monarch Tales and whatever, and then the following block, is really going to lay the framework of how the public feels the game will age long term. Because right now, you have a very polarized mixed bag. You have some people that love the game, they collect it, they invest in it, they play it, they do all of it. You have other people that jumped in recently, or they bought Monarch at $600 a box, $650, or they bought the Tails. They were buying the cases of 4 boxes of Tails for $700, $800, or I guess $850 with tax. You know, and they've lost a lot of their money, and they didn't even get any promos or anything. So they're very bitter. They're very skeptical of the next few releases of first edition, of pre-ordering or anything in general, based on the assumption that everybody believes the company is going to continue to expand the first edition print run substantially set over set, creating tremendous downward pressure and more skepticism. Depending how that unfolds is going to dictate a lot of the attitude towards the game at release. Now, Unlimited, in the model of first edition versus Unlimited, I don't see a problem with it. I think it's fine. I still think there should be a little bit, and I express this to James, and I hope they can make their own decisions. They're big boys, and they clearly know what they're doing. But in my opinion, I think there should be a few more specialty fun things slipped into either first edition, Unlimited, or both. There needs to. I would sprinkle a little extra. I'm not saying put 10 box toppers and 40 secret rares. I'm not saying do that. I would just do a little bit extra spice. I would add a little bit, just a little bit of fuel. That's my, and I would be very cautious of my print runs. Besides that, I really don't see a lot of major catastrophic risks. And I believe this entire event reinforces that the game has real legs, because this is proven by the emotional feedback of people who are passionate about the game around the world. And that was the ultimate takeaway. That's the most important variable we can all learn, is how much do people give a shit? And we learned from the Rudy Gemkeeper card, doing it, making it expensive, putting it behind the paywall of the Patreon, which people are like, you can't even sign up anyway. You know, we learned the most important thing, in that people are already emotionally connected, vested, and they're upset because they don't want the game to fail. And that alone is the most priceless piece of data that we can understand. That alone tells us that moving forward, the game has legs. Yeah, the Pro Tour and these pro events and the calling, that's great and all. But as with Magic, as with every card game in the world, tournament, pro, organized play is only a section of the gameplay. Most players never go. It's like in Magic, it was like 98, 99% of all players don't even go to events. It's outrageous. But we learn a lot. And that's the biggest takeaway. And that's why I consider this game a huge success. And it'll go down in history as an educational, bizarre learning experience. Can't wait for the next game.